Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Adrian Knight. Adrian, welcome.
Thomas, hello. Lovely to meet you.
It's good to have you. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. So I buy and sell businesses for a living. I've been doing this for a while now. I've acquired, I think it's about 10 businesses in the last sort of three and a half years. I've also sold a few as well. It hasn't all been roses. I've had definitely had some train crashes in there in the journey, but yeah, it's been great fun. But I've used my skill set to build a small group of companies in the children's education space. So we currently have two businesses there. I'm just about to bring in the third one. And yeah, we educate around 10,000 under 5-year-olds each academic term here in the UK. So yeah, lots to keep me occupied.
Well done. Thank you for the introduction. I've spoken to a couple of people who acquisitions and that sort of thing, and my interpretation is that it's not the easiest thing to do. So
Hmm.
well done on that. The interesting thing I wanted to speak to you about today was your mindset and personal growth stuff. And
Yeah.
you said in messages to me that you're up at 4 a.m. every day, and you go through a very specific process. So I have seen some interest in what some people refer to as the morning routine. So
Mhm.
I'm interested to know what it is that you do and what it has given you in your everyday working life.
Absolutely. I love talking about this, and we'll pretty much talk about it to anyone who's prepared to listen because it has been so transformational for me. And I suppose the best place to start is to give some context and a bit of backdrop. And so, without going on for too long or into too much detail, about 2 years ago now, I was waking up at around 2:30 in the morning in a complete and utter state of panic. Like I was having very severe anxiety attacks to the point that I was laying awake for the next like hour and a half, sort of 2 hours, in a state of complete dread, utterly like convinced, like curled up, utterly convinced everything was imploding and all of this stuff was happening. And it would take me around 2 hours to gently talk myself out of that and to realize that it's okay. You know, it's not as bad as what you may have thought over the last hour or so and couple of hours. And so it got to a point where I just there's two things. One, I realized I just couldn't carry on like that. It was having a massive impact in my life. But two, it also made me realize that the lifestyle I was living then, like it made me think more about that. And I just sort of projected out like a few years, sort of 5 years, and even, a bit further. And I just felt that at the end of that period, in that time, I may have a successful business, but I almost certainly would have lost my family, would have lost my partner, my 4-year-old daughter, she's 4 now. And yeah, what sort of place would I be in? So that started me on a journey where I actually started going to see a therapist to help sort of untangle some of this. And that led me to a place where I started to create more space and bandwidth in my life for me and to use that time to focus on me, which up until that point was quite a rarity because I was so busy trying to be everything for everyone else that actually having some time, even 15 minutes to sit down and have a cup of tea completely uninterrupted, not, on social media or anything. I mean, that was just a breath of fresh air. And so I've always liked early mornings. And so in order to get this space, I started getting up half an hour earlier, and I would use that time to read 10 pages of a book. And that's all it was. Like every single day, I would just get up half an hour earlier and I'd read 10 pages of a book. And what I noticed was that in a very short period of time, like literally within a matter of weeks, I started to feel quite differently. And I started to view that time in the morning not as a chore, as in, oh, I need to get up early, which I think is the natural reaction to most people when you say about early mornings. But I started to see it as a gift. And I started to recognize that that was quite quickly becoming the best part of my day. And so that led me very organically to say, well, what if I got up 45 minutes earlier? What else could I do? Maybe I could do some meditation or some visualizing, just something that focused on me. And so it kept going along like that, to the point where I was getting up at the time around 5 a.m. every morning. And before, I was getting up around sort of 6:30, 7 o'clock. So I started, I didn't start at 4, certainly didn't even start at 5. But I found myself getting up at 5 a.m. and having 2 hours in the day, before the day even started, to read, to meditate, and then to go to the gym and exercise. And I was feeling pretty good, and life was starting to get pretty good as well, but I didn't connect the dots. And it wasn't until I went on holiday. So we went on holiday just for a week with Vicky, who's now my wife, and my daughter Evie. And it was a really lovely holiday. Like the sun was shining. It was just a nice, relaxing holiday, but I felt awful. And I couldn't understand it. I was like, of all of the places, of all the environments, this is not what I like. It's not how I expected to feel. And it was a day before we came home when I woke up and it clicked. I was like, you know what? I know exactly what's changed here. I haven't done me. Like, I was waking up, and although we was on holiday, I was going straight into dad mode. I was going straight into partner mode or husband mode now. And again, just like being there for them, but I hadn't been there for myself like I had been like previously. And that was when everything sort of fell into place. So I came back from that and went straight back into like my morning routine again, and instantly felt better, and instantly felt that, okay, I'm back type thing. But what sort of come from that morning routine is that these massive changes started happening in my life that I couldn't understand why they were happening, and they were all extremely positive. And yeah, they were just like quite profound in all different areas, to the point where I was like, this is so cool, I'm going to get up even earlier. So I now get up at 4 a.m. I genuinely, hand on heart, go to bed every night excited to wake up at 4 a.m. I actually wake up just before 4 a.m. Like, I rarely wake up to my alarm. It's normally around 10 to sort of 5 to 4. And the first thing I do is take a screenshot of my phone and put a quote the time, put a quote on there and just post it onto Instagram to start my day in the right way, but hopefully other people's as well.
That just immediately makes me think of Jocko Willing with the watch.
Yeah, it's right, the watch. Yeah, I love that watch. Yeah.
And, it's a great, should we say, introduction to the episode. There's lots I want to follow up on. The first thing that stands out to me is in relation to the waking up at 2:30 with some panic. Did you get to the bottom of what it was that was, the root cause of that issue?
I did, and I didn't do it by myself. I needed some external help with this, which I think is quite common and also quite healthy as well, because it's quite easy to go round and round. And sometimes you just need even just like a 15-minute conversation with someone who could be a bit more objective. But the way the therapist who I went to see, the way he described the situation and why, and the root cause of this anxiety was like, he said, imagine your life is a car and you've got the 4 wheels, and one of the wheels is your love and relationships, and another one of the wheels is your work and career, and another one of the wheels is your health and fitness, and the 4th wheel is your fun and recreation. He said, your car, your wheel for the work and career one is massively overflated to the point that it's about to burst. And your other 3 wheels are flat, like there's no air in them at all. He's like, that is the cause of this. There's no sort of balance there. And even just taking some of the air out of the work and like the work and career wheel and putting it into the others, you're going to find that your car starts moving forward a bit more easier. And if you can get to a place where the 4 wheels are evenly pumped, then you're going to be going forward at a speed that you've not quite experienced to date. And when he first said that to me, I was like, okay, that's a cool analogy. I can understand that, but didn't think too much more of it. But certainly in hindsight, that's exactly what's happened. And this is what I sort of touched on earlier, like the changes that have happened have been profound, and the speed that they've happened as well have been profound as well. And so, yeah, it just kind of, it flew in. I was always of the impression I had to work really hard if you want to be successful and stuff like that. But actually, it was not working as much. That sort of speeded up some of those, sort of symbols of success, I guess.
Well, I think it's a cool analogy as well. And I also was going to follow up on the fact that if someone is in the same position as you, meaning they're stressed, but they're putting a lot of effort into work and perhaps not so much in the other stuff, the reservations there would be, well, if I stop working so hard, then my work's gonna take a dive in some way. But presumably that was not what happened, and things got better for you. Is that right?
Well, what happened was because I was getting up earlier, I was creating space. I was creating some space in my life for me, starting with, a very short amount of time. It wasn't even like an hour, like it was very short amount of time, but that felt good. And it made me want to create more space very organically. And then as I started to get some more space, I started to use that space to exercise as well. Like exercise is a big part of my life. But what I've come to appreciate more than anything is that like the exercise isn't there because I want to be, it's not there for the physical reasons. Like it's not because I want my body to look in a particular way or to do anything. It's more about what it does to my mind. And so that first part of my day, I'm investing in my emotional well-being, my mental well-being, and my physical well-being. And what that did and what it continues to do on a daily basis is that if I'm waking up, regardless of what time I'm waking up as a level 2, level 3 version of myself. And it pretty much applies to everyone. We've just spent 6 to 9 hours lying down. There's a lack of oxygen going around our body, and we wake up, and because of that lack of oxygen, we feel groggy and we feel negative, and we start our day off in a negative way. Now, what a lot of people do, myself included for a very long time, was then you go into your day, that level 2, level 3 version of yourself. And so you turn up to the work and you turn up to your family and to everything else, and you're at that level. But because I was investing time in me and my well-being, I was coming back from the gym, 7 a.m., and I was feeling great. And I was coming like through the door and I was going straight into dad mode, straight into work mode and family mode and all that. But I was more like a level 7, level 8 version of myself. And so that started to have an impact. But then what that also done was, and I didn't appreciate this until, again, looking back in hindsight, was I started to turn up to my work as a level 7, level 8 version. And what I mean by that was that I started to see things with more clarity, and I started to have a lot more confidence in following through on my decisions I was making. So I was looking at my work load, for example, and being like, well, why am I doing that? It doesn't make any sense. Like I'd never seen it in that light before because I didn't have that level of clarity. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why don't we just stop doing that or get rid of that or go in a different direction there? And I had the confidence to be able to follow through on that plan. So the work side of things started to balance out quite naturally because I started to cut away the low impact stuff, like the stuff that wasn't really moving the dial forward, and actually spend my time now spend the time focusing on the high impact stuff. And if anything, it's kind of gone the other way now because like my children's education business, I'm not involved in that at all daily. I have a team of very experienced people running that, which puts me in a very lovely position of having quite a lot of bandwidth. So I can spend more time doing that. But the time I'm working is more about, high quality decisions and high quality, like high leverage activities. And so it all happened organically. It wasn't something I planned. It just happened organically by creating that, bit of space in my life every single day consistently.
Well, you mentioned initially that you started by just adding like 15 minutes before your
Yeah.
normal day in order to read. There's a sort of like a two-part question. Would you recommend people do it incrementally in the way that it kind of happened for you? And also, which kind of books are you reading, and is there anything strategic there when you first do it?
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant question. So yeah, absolutely. I always recommend people start incrementally. I have so many people approach me, and like I've taken this quite far now, and that I've actually like got my own app where I manage myself on this on a daily basis, and I've got some people on there who I'm sort of helping them get their stuff right. And they always say, oh, I can't get up at 4 a.m. It's the first thing they say to me every single time. Oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't even do 5 a.m. And I'm like, great, you don't need to. What time do you normally get up? They're like 7 o'clock. I'm like, great, we're going to start at 6:30 or 6:45, depending on the person. And that's all we're going to start. And if it's 15 minutes earlier, that's absolutely fine, because you're not going to have time to do much. But what you will have time to do is to go downstairs completely uninterrupted, make a nice cup of coffee, nice cup of tea, sit there without your phone and just like woosah, like just do you. You may want to look at a book and you may read a couple of pages, that's fine. The point of this is that you're creating time in your day for you, and you're not using that time to just mindlessly scroll through, Facebook or whatever, or to just mindlessly stare at TV. You're just creating some space for you. And what happens, again, it's very organic, is people start to cherish that time of the day, that 15 minutes. It doesn't take long, like literally, like you're talking weeks, maybe even days for some people. And they're like, oh, you know what, I will get up at 6:30 rather than 7:15, because I read a page or 2 pages of that book yesterday, and I'd quite like to read a little bit more before I start my day. And so it's a very, very organic process. And in terms of the books, like I'm an avid reader, and the books I think are really important, or the reading is really important, because like you want it to be like some romance novel is not what we're talking about here. Nothing wrong with that. I don't read them personally, but the books you want to be reading and the information you want to be taking on is to be focused around you, like your personal growth. So whether that's it's an all-out personal development book, whether that's a book on relationships, whether that's a book on, if you're a business owner, like marketing, or something that will help move you forward in your life, that's what you want to be reading. I got a call this week actually from a good friend of mine who was so excited. Just put my daughter to bed, and he rang me up like, can you speak? If you've got 5 minutes? We ended up speaking for an hour. He was so excited because he had started implementing this in his day. And he's like, my gym doesn't open to 6, but I go to the gym, and then right after that I sit down and I read the Financial Times. Like he works in the city. He's like, I feel amazing. And you know what happened? He said, I had a conversation with a guy who runs quite a big business, many millions. And he said, not only did I hold my own conversation with him, that I actually came back with information that he was trying to reference but didn't have the knowledge for, but that I'd actually read in the Financial Times. And he was so impressed, he's just sent me a text message to say how he thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. And it all came from that little bit of reading the Financial Times, that improvement. And this is what I mean by the advancements you start to take organically. Because had he not got up a little bit earlier and read that, he would not have been in that position to like make the most of that opportunity. But he almost certainly wouldn't have recognized it even was an opportunity, so.
I can certainly see the merits in doing it in the morning, meaning like it's the first thing you do, and it starts your day off, and also no one can get hold of you. So no one's trying to interrupt that time. Do you think that it's possible to do elsewhere in the day, or would you only ever recommend it in the morning?
I don't, not to the same level. And what I'm not saying, like I think a bedtime routine is important. I see people struggle with that a lot. And I think routines at different parts of the day are important as well. But if you were to do something like this at, say, lunchtime, then you got to think, well, I've just spent, that whole morning, 3-4 hours, whatever, however long, as that level 2, level 3 version of myself, for starters. And also that time, like the benefit of doing it in the morning is that you can't be interrupted. And it's such a relief to know that I'm just not going to have any messages come through for 2 or 3 hours. Like I just know that. And it's just such a relief. And I've tried doing this at like lunchtime before, and like sitting there and doing my meditation and get knocks on the door and stuff, and it's like you come up more stressed from it. And at the end of the day, I just find like the same with going to like the gym or exercising. At the end of the day, it has its place, but as part of your core routine, I think it's so easy to be, I've had such a long day, this has happened, I'm tired, I'm not going to do it. And then you don't do it, and then you start like to defeat yourself and give yourself a hard time. Like I feel it can only really work in the morning, like for the purpose of what we're trying to do this for.
Well, I am totally on the same page as you in that regard. The voice in my head, that nagging voice in the head, I have compared myself previously to a grumpy bear in the morning. So, and this is a question for the night owls who might be listening. I mean, what are your thoughts in relation to that? Like, I'm not a morning person subject.
I really do hear that a lot. And I also recognize that some people are more happier getting up in the morning and some people are more happier staying away or staying awake until the early hours in the morning. I used to actually be the latter. I used to be a night owl, and yeah, sort of half one, like 2 in the morning would have been my bedtime. Um, I think it's all relative. And so if you're used to going to bed at 2 and you wake up at 10, great, wake up at 9:30, wake up at 9 a.m. and start there. I also think it's really important to say, I am quite a positive person and I get very passionate about this, but that doesn't mean I jump out of bed, big star jump and like a Rocky scene, sort of punch in the air. I wake up and I'm groggy and I'm like, ugh. And like, I don't want to be getting up most days. And that's my instant, like the first thought that comes to my mind. But then because I'm doing this for a while now, it quickly switches and like, oh, wait a minute. I remember why I'm doing this now. And I tend to fumble downstairs. I've lost count of the amount of times I've gone to the gym with my t-shirt on the wrong way and not even like recognizing it until I'm sort of like finishing my workout. Like seriously, like so many times because I can't see it. I'm not of that mind. But emotionally, you start to get through that when you start this process. So the first few days are always going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But as you start to connect the reason why you're doing it and how good it feels to have a bit more time for yourself, it starts to get a lot easier, a lot quicker. And then at some point down the line, it just completely switches. And you're like, I couldn't not do this because I know I will feel rubbish the rest of the night, the rest of the day.
And I know that we're starting initially with just 15 minutes. What's the end goal in relation to, is it 2 hours or 3 hours before you're typically or normally waking up?
I don't think there is a hard and fast goal for people to have. I think it varies from person to person. It also varies on how you want to be using that time as well, because there's no point waking up and sitting downstairs for 3 hours and yeah, you've read 10 pages, but you're not doing anything else. I do think you start in like small sections and you gradually push it back, but know what you want to use the time for. So I kind of instinctively sense that at some point down the line, I think I'm going to be getting up a little bit earlier, around 3:30, maybe 3. I don't see it going any earlier than that. But if I was to start doing that now, I don't know how I'd use that time. And that time probably wouldn't be used very productively. Like I know how I use my time now. I meditate, I visualize, I exercise, I do a number of things in it, and I'm really happy with that. So I think the time will naturally shift depending on how you want to use that period of the morning.
Okay. So in relation to visualization, is that an outcome or a goal that you're trying to achieve?
I think with all of this, there's nothing about it. Like with all of this, there's none of this is being done with an end goal in mind. It's about the process. That's where the value is. So I'll use the gym because it's a really simple example. I'm not going to the gym because I want to get a certain size of muscle or body fat, or even because I want to train for a marathon or event. I'm going to the gym because I know what it does to my mind, and all of those like outbound results are just like an offshoot of it. Same with reading a book. I'm not so much reading the book because I want to finish the book. I'm reading only the 10 pages because it focuses my mind and it feeds my mind, and the enjoyment is in that part. If I was to read more than 10 pages, I'd probably start to switch off and get a little bit bored. It's more the process than the goal that is like the value here. And that's kind of what I meant when I sort of mentioned that there will be at some point when it switches, and that's when your mind is sort of switching from that end result type focus through to, you know what, I don't care what book or how long it takes me to read the book or how big or how small. It's about the reading itself and the time and the space I have to do that.
Yeah, it sort of reminds me of the focus on the journey rather than the destination type, the phrase.
Yeah,
Would you say it's predominantly a well-being exercise?
I really would. I really would. It is a well-being exercise, and it's physical, mental, emotional, and even spiritual well-being. And what I've noticed, because I've been doing this for quite a while now consistently, is that that well-being compounds. So you've got the same input going in every single day, but the output is compounding and building up. It's sort of building up speed. So it's not like 1 + 1 + 1 sort of being each day is coming out with 7 at the end of the week. It's more like a 9 or a 10 or 11, but every week it's getting bigger and bigger.
So the physical is the gym, the mental would be the reading, the spiritual for you would be the meditation or the
Yeah.
visualization. Is there any other aspect that you consider, like dietary or anything else that we're missing?
Yeah, I do. I mean, so just to say, with the physical with the gym, I choose to go to the gym because that's what I want to do. Um, Walking a dog, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, in my book, that's a big tick. That's a really big tick, particularly if it's early morning and before the other dog walkers come out, and it's impossible to just, like walk without sort of, lovely as it is, but just to walk uninterrupted. So it doesn't have to be the gym. The reading, I think, is pretty standard across everyone. The meditating doesn't even have to be meditating. For some people, some form of mindfulness, whether that's a crossword, whether that's learning to play a musical instrument, like highly concentrated focus, that in my book is a big tick as well, particularly if they're doing it every single day and making the space for that. With the nutritional side of things, that is important, but I've always found that the nutrition aligns with the exercise. So the fastest way to take control of your diet, which is, the definition of a diet, is just what you're consuming every day. It doesn't mean it's some yo-yo diet or whatever. But the fastest way to take control of that is to actually start with the exercise piece. Because you feel better, you're less likely to want, like, to overeat on the chocolate or the junk food.
Yeah, totally agree with that. One question around because we're adding extra time into the day. So, if you would be getting up at 6 and you get up at 4, it's like 2 hours out of the day. Do you then take that off the end of your day or do you sleep less?
Um, it's a little bit of a combination, actually. So I just knowing myself, I always make sure that I think more about how I manage my energy rather than how I manage my time. So the morning, like waking up in that morning routine, that is when I have, technically the most energy, even though I'm groggy first thing. Like I have the most energy because none of it's been used anywhere else, and it's being directly focused on my most like valuable and important like asset, which is myself. And it's the same for everyone. Next is going into like family and then work. But then when you break down work, like I always leave, I always have like the important stuff that I'm doing in the morning, and then stuff like admin and that things where you can be a little bit more mindless about it tends to be towards the end of the day. Then for me personally, it rolls into spending time with my daughter and her bedtime routine and reading her a book and all that. I very rarely work past that. I may do a podcast, but that's not work. But yeah, I always try and have a cut off, and I always like personally have a time where I want to sit down and have my meal, like my evening meal or my last meal of the day, and to at that point I may watch, half an hour of Netflix or whatever, like something on TV, is a little bit more mindless as it is for most of the time, but that's exactly what I want. I want to switch off, and then I go to bed. So my bedtime normally ranges somewhere between 9 and 10 p.m. If I'm feeling really tired, then I'll go to bed a little bit earlier. But yeah, I'm certainly not an advocate of getting as little sleep as possible. I think our bodies need rest and our minds need rest, but the evening part just naturally rolled out of the mornings. And I continue to find, if you fix your mornings, then the rest of the day tends to take care of itself, particularly your bedtimes. You just need to be mindful about lying in bed and, say, scrolling on social media. That will massively derail you. So
Well, that's nice segue actually, because we've covered like how to do it correctly, for lack of a better term, but we haven't covered how to maybe do it incorrectly, or maybe go wrong in some way, and that involves, I mean, the first example I think of is like scrolling social media, that kind of thing, which would interrupt what I think would be a positive thing and make it a negative thing. So, there are any thoughts you have around ways that this process can go wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. The most common one is that someone wakes up at, say, 6:30 and they stay in bed. And even if they do their reading in bed, it's not quite the same, because I've just had too many people come back to me saying, "Oh yeah, I fell asleep," or "I didn't quite get my reading." Like, I think it's really important that when you wake up and you get up, like, you get up, you get out of your bed, you get out of that environment, because don't forget, biologically, you're still largely lying down. You've not got oxygen going through your body. Like, there's only so much that you're going to feel sleepy, and you're creating an environment where you're going to feel groggy. You get up and you get moving, even if you go downstairs, it makes all the difference, and it gets you out of that mindset. That's the biggest one I see. The second biggest one is the biggest mistake is people, and I used to do this at the beginning. I'll get up early Monday to Friday, but I'm never sleeping on the weekend because I deserve it, because I got up early. And that's a very common one as well, because you're then, again, if you think about it, you're going into your day at that lower version of yourself, which means you're more inclined to, let's get a takeaway tonight, or it has a very direct effect. And so it's all about, especially in the beginning, getting to that place, not forcing it, but getting to that place naturally where the penny does drop, and you're like, wait a minute, this is a blessing. This is a gift I'm giving myself. Why would I want to shortcut myself by sleeping in, even if it's a Sunday? Like, the world is still, I've got this completely, this freedom to do what I want to do without any real obligations. And it truly is a gift, but it can be hard for people to see that at the beginning. And the final one, sorry, I don't mean to go on, Thomas, but the
No,
final
you're
one
fine.
is the evenings, and it's normally derailed by either TV or people's phones. And again, I've done this for a long time, particularly with my phone, getting to bed. And I actually used to I used to look forward to getting into bed and going through Facebook and catching up on the day, and then going on Instagram, like all the social profiles, and just browsing the web a bit mindlessly. But then I was noticing that when it came to sleeping, like, if I said to myself, "Oh yeah, I want to get a bit of an earlier night, I'm going to be asleep by 9:30," it'd be 10 o'clock and I'll still be on my phone because I'm getting engrossed in something. And then when I did put my phone down, I'm wired, like I can't quite sleep, like I'm switched on, and so it might be 10:30, and then I'm getting wound up because I know I want to get up early, but I've just lost an hour of that sleep time. So then I'm like, oh, I'm going to get tired tomorrow, and blah blah blah. I think like, a lot of people need to be more disciplined there. I'm not even saying uh like highly regimented, but just have a cutoff with your phone, like put it on charge, turn it down and just don't look at it. And it forces you to do crazy things like speak to your partner or, just to chill out without anything. So
I'm interested to know what your take is on devices, just because my interpretation of this conversation is this is a very purposeful thing that you're doing, which is improving your life. And I think a lot of people with screens, it's detrimental to their life. So I'm just wondering whether that has followed through into that area of your life in relation to screens and social media. Do you have any tactics or strategies in relation to that topic?
in terms of how I manage myself with social media and my time with that, it does bring a bit more structure to it. So when I first look on social media, it's normally actually because I'm posting on Instagram and just sharing like aspects of my morning routine, which I do every single day, just to sort of motivate people to want to at least explore this. But I don't do that normally until around 6:30. So it's been like 2 hours of the day I've had, but I haven't actually been on social media, and that's been really important to me because for the same reasons when you go to bed, it's quite easy to get lost and just to get sucked into that world. I've never been one to be glued to my phone, like particularly social media, every single minute of every single day. That's just not been me. Largely because I'm quite hands-on with stuff, so I like to be out there doing things, and I've seen it probably as a bit more of a distraction than most. But I also see it as a very powerful tool as well. I think the biggest one with people is just it's again setting yourself some boundaries, like, right, come 8 o'clock, I'm off social media, I'm off my phone. I may get messages from WhatsApp or text messages, but they can wait till the morning. There's not going to be anything that urgent, and if it is, they were cool, and I would know that. That's the biggest one. And I've got some people who they don't even go on WhatsApp anymore. Not my personal choice, I use it a lot, but that was their choice because they recognize how it was sucking their time and throwing things out of kilt for them.
So having rules that you stick to, essentially.
I like to think boundaries because it sounds quite it sounds quite sort of Jocko Willink, like in a sense that like hard and fast discipline, and there's like extreme and no compromise. You're getting up 7 days a week and you're not allowed to go on social. Like it comes across or can come across as quite hard, but it's because of how it's being viewed. I view it as 7 days a week, I'm giving myself a gift. And I have a boundary of not going into social media, which is, again, I wasn't like, you can't go on social media. I really wanted to go on at 4:30, then I will. But it was more a case of, I don't want to spoil that time that I have for myself by something like social media. And the same with bedtime is that I'm going to be waking up tomorrow. I can't wait. Even though I might feel groggy in the morning, I don't want to do anything that's going to massively derail that. So it's coming from a place of, it's a lot more gentle than it may appear on the surface of it. It's a lot more like just about your well-being. I
appreciate the you sharing it, and I think it would be really beneficial for basically for everyone to introduce it. So thank you, I guess, is what I was trying to say. Before we move on, I had one question that I wanted to ask you about your business, but before we move on from it, are there any misconceptions that we haven't covered today that people have, which you would want to clear up?
Biggest one I encounter is I'm not a morning person. And people immediately think, 3, 4, 5, even 6 o'clock, I'm just not a morning person. Again, I just think when you change your perspective on that, well, certainly if you keep telling yourself you're not a morning person, then you won't be one. For starters, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when you change your perspective on it slightly, it at least opens up, well, am I, or could I be? Because we have just spent many hours lying down. Biologically, there's less oxygen going around. When you wake up, we all feel groggy. like all of us, like regardless of how positive or negative one is, like that's how we feel. And it's perfectly human and natural to feel like that. The trick then is just to get going and just to give yourself that nudge, which is where people stop. They just say, oh no, I'm not a morning person. I think that's probably the biggest one. And also that this is highly relative in the sense that for me it's 4 a.m., but it doesn't have to be for everyone. If you get up at 6 a.m., that could be such a huge win. And if you use that first hour of your day to read 10 pages of book, which will take you 15 to 20 minutes, have a nice cup of tea, and maybe do 15 minutes of meditation, or however you want to use that, as long as it's investing in yourself, you will very quickly start to notice differences, and you will start to feel differently, and you'll start to notice changes happening, and you won't really understand why, but you know the changes are good. And so yeah, they're the sort of two main ones.
So for someone who says that they're a morning person, how would you reframe that?
That they are a morning person. How
What
would
could
I
they tell
reframe
themselves instead?
it? That you're giving yourself probably the greatest gift that you can give yourself, which is true. Like you're giving yourself like you're giving yourself time for you, and time to like develop and uncover who you really are and what you really want.
You said previously about the fact that everyone feels groggy when they've been lying down for a certain number of hours. My perspective is it's less about the mornings and more about how someone feels when they've been lying down for that certain period. So
Mm.
it wouldn't necessarily be about being a morning person, but it's about how quickly you can get yourself the oxygen around the blood, which is what you said, in order to make yourself feel better, is one thing which, I mean, you shared with me, which I'm repeating your words back to you, but I'll take credit for it anyway.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. I mean, if you're a night owl and you get up at 10 a.m., you're going to feel groggy, whether it's 10 a.m. or whether it's 6 or 4, whatever time, like you're going to feel groggy. It's just, yeah, part of being human.
Well, I just had one more question about what you do for a living, which is buying and selling businesses. The interesting thing I find about this topic is how you segue into that, because I don't feel like people, for example, go and get a degree in buying and selling businesses, and that's what they
Mm.
do. It's more like this is how I went from this to that. So, have you got anything you want to share there?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing to share is that I am a absolutely terrible startup entrepreneur. I had 12 failed startups before I acquired my first business, and my first business I bought for £1. It was a 30-year-old management consultancy. Had around 8, 9 people in it, and it specialized in like building value in a business and exit planning in a business in preparation for a sale, which is a process that normally takes a few years to do properly, at least. And then that business physically sold those client businesses. So it sold about 150 million worth of companies over the course of its career. And that was an amazing platform for me, an amazing insight into understanding, well, I've just bought the business and now I can see how to add value and then to sell them. So it kind of like gave the full picture. But so I show people how to do this, and like the buying the business is the easy part. It's what you do when you got it is where the hard work is and where the most value is added, and then how you get out of it with with a good upside. What I've learned over time and working with other people is that there is no, like, you can't learn this stuff from sitting in a classroom. Like, there is absolutely knowledge you need to have, and it is the starting point here, because there are risks involved and you need to know how to protect yourself. But you need to have a baseline of knowledge, but there's a very fine limit on that. Like, if you used to do a 3-year degree in this, I honestly don't know what you do after the first term, because that you need that baseline knowledge, but you learn this from doing it. It's from having conversations with people. It's a very experiential learning process, and I'm continuing to learn so much. And it's been multiple acquisitions and sort of exits down the line, and I'm still learning a lot from this. The biggest thing I would say to anyone who's interested in this is that, what do you need to be successful? The conception everyone has, or a lot of people have, is that you have to be great with numbers. You have to be like an accountant or come from a finance background. And when people say about buying and selling businesses, it's like quite often people say stuff like, "Oh, do you mean like Pretty Woman?" And where they like Richard Gere buys businesses, like is that kind of like boardroom environment where you may have like 10 lawyers on each side. That's how it may work at like large businesses, but at the small business level, it's a highly relational process. It's about being human again. And the number one skill you need is people skills, being able to sit down in front of the owner of a business and to recognize that for most people, this is their life's work. They've spent 15, 20, 25 plus years building this. They've got their retirement tied up in it. They've got their majority of their wealth and certainly their income tied up in it. They're now at the point where they want to move on, typically because something's happened in their personal life or maybe even their business life, but there may be a health scare or there may be something that has caused them to realize, I don't want to be doing this anymore. There's other things I want to do in my life. And then sitting down, having a conversation with you because they want to know, are you going to be a safe pair of hands for their business? And are you going to be able to give them what they want to be able to leave, with a happy face? That's what you need. That's the skills.
Thank you for sharing that. If someone wants to get in touch with you about the buying or selling of a business, where do they go? And then also, would you help someone if they actually wanted to implement a morning routine? Is that something that you would do?
Yeah, it is actually. So the best place to go, certainly right now, is actually my Instagram profile, of all places, because I've first of all, I'm very active on there. I post several times a day, and I share sort of insights, like the first thing in the morning and kind of what I'm doing, what I'm reading and stuff that morning for people to see. But then I also share quite a bit about what's going on in my business, like children's business, and then with the acquisitions I'm doing as well. So it's a good place for people to sort of get some like actual insight. On that profile, I have links to a mini website where people can find out more about like the morning routine stuff. So I've got an app. It's been so powerful for me. I've basically built an app where I manage like all of this on there on a daily basis, like tick off what I'm doing and that. And I've got a number of people who've joined that and whose lives have changed very quickly. And also on the buying and selling side of things, got a few scorecards where people can at least start to understand, is this right for them? And if it is, then we can have a conversation. And I could potentially sort of help them through that process.
Good stuff. Well, you'll definitely have a new follower at the end of this conversation.
I'm sorry, I should probably actually say what my Instagram profile is. So the handle is Adrian J Knight, Knight with a K and no S on the end. So
Right, well, I'll put that link in the description anyway. But is there anything that I should have asked you about today?
honestly, I don't think so. I think the questions around, what could get in the way of this working for someone are really great questions, because for a lot of people, they don't even give themselves the opportunity of trying this. They just talk themselves out of it before they've even done it, and it's just such a great shame because they've just got so much to gain, so much to gain. So I think we've covered everything.
Well, when this episode airs, I will say whether or not I've been successful with it. But you've inspired me to give it a proper go anyway. So thank you for that, and thank you very much for being a great guest today. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Likewise, Thomas. Thank you so much.